speaking moistly. You 2 meters apart, speaking moistly. Speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speaking Moistly. I let that go a little bit longer than I should have, and I apologize. With me today as my guest host is Greg. Greg, how are you today?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. Doing well. How are you?
I'll keep it light. I'm doing great.
Great. Fantastic.
All right. So apparently there are some subreddits across Canada right now. Some Instagram accounts, some Twitter accounts. I saw a couple of city councilors, and before I understood what was going on, I saw these black squares, and I thought, well, that's a weird picture to share with Black Lives Matter. And then I thought, I know, I'll share some information that I learned yesterday, and I shared some information just about Black Lives Matter and potential funding, blah, 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 blah. But this is apparently how we're going to solve racism in Canada. We're going to post black squares? Have you heard of this thing, Greg? What's going on?
Interestingly, yes. My someone I know was telling me about this protest, I guess, on Instagram specifically, and we're all going to post these black squares as a protest to let people who are part of the movement, I guess, or people who have more valuable experiences and things to say, to give them the spotlight. Although at the same time as my happens to be white friend is telling me about this, my happens to be black friend messages me and says, this shit is so dumb. Pardon me, I shouldn't be swearing, but they're like, this stuff is really silly. Yeah, I think it's funny because in an effort to try and solve racism or not be racist, she sent a tweet, my friend who happens to be black, basically saying like, yeah, now when people are searching the hashtag Black Lives Matter, they just get a bunch of black squares. So it's actually making it harder for people to find content on social media with all these protest posts of people helping. Hey, I'm helping. And it reminds me of another post I saw on my Facebook, which I won't mention who it was, but it was earlier on after the tragic death of George Floyd. And it was, I see people on my friends list and you're being silent, and like silence is compliance. And, I'm seeing you people on my friends list not posting anything. And I'm thinking like, hold on. So you think that white people posting stuff, virtue signaling on social media is going to solve racism? And it just seemed very odd to me. Mm-hmm. It was very kind of, I don't know what world you live in to think that posting something on social media is going to change the world. But, and I personally don't like that whole silence is compliance thing, because personally I saw the video, I was shocked. And then I saw the riots continue, and I'm like, there's a lot to take in, and it's like, I'm reflecting on everything that's happening.
Yeah.
The silence is compliance thing. It almost encourages like you need to impulsively react to what's happening.
Yeah. Well, they're demanding that you fall in line with how they feel you should feel, right? Like you must believe what I don't believe or what I believe, and if you don't, I want to know it. So either you're with me or you're against me. I think that's when you reduce it down to its what is it, common denominators, that's the fraction term. That's what you end up with.
And I think it's like, I mean, I will say this, being someone who is white, I can't emotionally understand like how deeply emotionally this would affect non-white people. Like I can't connect with how deeply it's going to affect those people. However, like I think it's really unfortunate that it's like silence is compliance. So it's like, because I didn't say anything, I'm as bad as this cop. I'm as bad as this person. Yeah. Like that's really messed up to like attribute these kind of traits to me just because I haven't said anything yet, or like to whoever. Yeah. It's very kind of divisive almost, and makes it like, oh, you haven't said anything, you must be okay with like the murdering of this man. And
Yeah.
it's like, whoa,
I
whoa.
didn't jump on the bandwagon and say like I'm sad that he's dead too. And it's right, like I don't do Facebook, so I understand, like I remember what you're talking about. Everybody, it's like Christmas morning, everybody's like Merry Christmas, hashtag Merry Christmas. Or like, if, on your birthday, you get like a bunch of people saying happy birthday, whatever. So like seeing everybody jump on this bandwagon. I remember there was a time, and this is going back like pre 2015, where everybody was talking about the soccer games. I think the World Cup, and like it's like everybody's talking about this match. You don't want to post about it. And it's like it's encouraging you because they want content from you, right? Because then they can show your friends the content, right? But it is interesting, right, this whole demand that you pledge fealty publicly to this woke culture, despite the fact that like there are problems with this. Like Canada's not a racist nation, and what happened to Mr. Floyd happened in the United States. And you said, I can't possibly understand, black people's, how deeply this goes, whatever, because you're white. Okay. But could you like read books about it? Could you have learned, like, are there ways to understand? I think that people say you can't possibly understand because you're not X are missing the fact that we're humans and we can learn things and we can, read things and watch movies and have discussions with people who are learned in the thing that you don't know. And it's interesting to me that the idea is just completely off the table. You are white, or you're a man, so you, just to make it not race, let's make it gender just for fun, or sex. You're a man, so you can't possibly comment on like a woman's reproductive rights, right? Well, what if I identify as a woman? Can I comment now? Like what's the slippery slope? And so like to focus in, right? Like I'm just talking about the idea. I think that it's faulty to say that there's no possible pathway to knowing about something unless you are that thing. I think that denies the human experience, right? Like you can know, and maybe I'm splitting hairs. Maybe we don't even need to go down the path, but you can understand, right? There's pathways.
I mean, of course, I think what was so powerful about this, impactful about this video, it was like very graphic. It's like we're seeing somebody get the life snuffed out of them. Every human being is watching that, being like, "Oh my goodness, like this is awful."
I didn't watch the video. I didn't watch the video.
It's hard to watch.
Yeah,
I watched it, and I was the whole time. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, no, I don't want to watch people die. I've got a choice, right? Like I don't have to.
It's a horrible, horrific thing to watch. Yeah. And I mean, obviously everyone connects with it on a human level, but like I hear things, and like I said, I can imagine what it's like, but I'll never know what it's like.
Yes. Okay. There's a difference between imagining and like having an understanding and knowing. And I would agree with you 100% there. Somebody can tell you what it's like to climb Mount Everest, but until you're like at the base of Hillary Step and it's snowing and you're like, I might die up here, you're not going to understand it at that level. Yes, there's a fundamental difference. And I think that you're right about that. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But sorry, I kind of cut you off and jumped in there. I apologize. Did I derail you?
That's okay. I was pretty well done my thought there. It's a huge topic in general.
Oh man, yeah, it is. Let's start the show with it, right? So here's Rex Murphy, and he says, do we not have a welcoming immigration policies? Are largest cities not a great montage of people from every corner of the world, of every color and creed? Do we not both in private and public celebrate Canada's multicultural nature? And he goes on, and I think he kind of overstates it here, goes a little sweet on it. But I think, and we can move on to the next topic. It's just as fraught. But I think fundamentally that's how a lot of people view Canada, as a tolerant nation, as a place where our multiculturalism is celebrated, and most people abhor racism of any form. So shoehorning it in and saying it's under every rock is wrong. And this article kind of talks about how we should be celebrating the progress made and talking about, he says, an inventory of how far we've come is never taken. The advances remain unacknowledged or unspoken, and that citizens hear so often from their betters how racist and discriminatory they are, right? So it's always the negative, never the positive. And I think that that's folly. How is that good leadership? It results in, crazy conversations like this.
Yeah. And for some reason, I'm actually thinking of corporations selling a certain product. Maybe it's a hair care product. You need to get this hair care product. You use it for your hair. But the thing is, if you look into it chemically and you use it the way the instructions say, it actually dries out your hair even more.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to keep getting more and more of that product. And I think that when it comes to progressive politicians, they definitely want more and more racism to continue to sell their products. So they are definitely going to play it up as much as possible to make it seem like the worst thing ever is apparently racist running around everywhere. And from the get-go of when this started to get more prevalent, I would say it probably came along with the rise of Justin Trudeau. There was more of this narrative of like, yeah, like you said, like kind of like racist under every rock, and that never sat well with me. And obviously, it's that rhetoric has been getting kind of more and more intense.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes, I actually read an article that someone sent me today, and it's from Huffington Post. Racism in Canada is ever prevalent, but we're in denial. And the article like makes this case, but I'm sorry, it had to go really far back in history to really find like examples of racism. And they were really kind of like, saying, hey, okay, here's there. And it's like, well, first of all, you're discounting a lot of things that have happened in Canada that are unanimously positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what Rex brings up here is a perfect example of that. And where is a better place on earth when it comes to striving for fairness and striving for this sort of thing? And yeah, and I mean, I don't want to get into the whole like, progressives are horrible people, but it's like, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. It'll never be enough. It'll always need to be more, and there's always need to be doing better. And but I think the fact of the matter is it's one of the best places to live on the planet. And I think that yeah, of course things could always be better, but I think we have a lot to be happy about and to celebrate, as opposed to trying to like make the relations between the people in Canada worse by kind of stoking that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I think I think the more they talk about it in this way, the more they stoke it. The more it doesn't help. It doesn't solve the problem the way that they're approaching it. And the backhanded, insulting way they're saying, we all know that more work needs to be done. Well, we aren't the ones who dressed in blackface, Justin. And at some point, the progressive people who are pushing for more and more and more 10 sick days and more and more and more, there's going to come backlash, because it's like the $15 an hour minimum wage that resulted in less hours and no more money for the people who were expecting the same amount of hours and more money, right? Like what they get isn't what they necessarily are selling as the thing that incites people to action.
For sure. And I think this is like, again, a huge topic, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do it justice.
No. I was going to move on.
But I was going to say, I feel as though progressive politicians kind of weaponize pity, and they kind of use pity. And I gotta say, there's a big difference between pitying an individual and a group of people and genuinely wanting the best for them.
Yeah.
And like, let's talk about the Indian Act. Like, we don't have to go into that right now, but it's there's a lot of real improvements that could be done. And I would definitely make the argument, if we had time, that progressives in Canada really love to commodify multiculturalism in a way, and all these things to kind of use it in their favor. And I think there's a big difference between commodifying it all and using it to their benefit to get votes, and actually making meaningful changes to actually help communities out.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that there's a lot of well, and I mean, I make this case all the time on my show, but there's a lot of like easy wins, lots of low-hanging fruit that could be done. And like, for anybody who's genuinely trying to make the country better, push the country forward, just straightforward, easy wins that you could do to help First Nations, to help a lot of people, and they choose not to do it. It's like it's a huge topic.
I have a real-time example, though, just to drive it home. Yeah. Bill Blair recently tweeted, hey, historic moment a month ago, we banned assault-style firearms, and we're helping communities stay safe. And it's like, there's been multiple deaths since that announcement in Toronto. I have a friend who lives in not a great neighborhood, And he's like, it's a complete joke that they're not even talking about illegal firearms.
Yep.
So it's like for them to be up there talking about how safe they're making everything, while people are literally dying in the street from illegal firearms. It's completely, it's horrible.
Yeah, yeah. But don't you be racist though. That's
Of course not.
That's the real.
Well,
that's the
apparently
real
it's way too
trouble.
late for that. Way too late for that.
All right, moving on. Doug Ford today, and I don't know if I know that they are debating this today. I don't know if the vote has gone through one way or the other. So we're like Schrodinger's cat in limbo at this point in time. Not sure. But Premier Doug Ford pushing to extend Ontario's state of emergency until June 30th. I'm going to say that and the article makes the case that because the Conservatives have a majority, they are probably going to they're probably going to push this through. I don't know the rationale, but I don't know the rationale for this declaration, but let's say that they do get it and push it through to the 30th. What do you think about that? Like, what do you think about that? Because I think it's too much. But go ahead.
I don't know. It scares me because I think that even the first couple of weeks of the lockdown, we saw how detrimental it was to the stock market and everything. And it's just had a snowball effect. And, I have a friend who works on Bay Street who's constantly networking and talking to different, C-level executives, and things are falling apart every which way.
Yep.
And I mean, sure, I can agree with trying to avoid a second wave and everything, but yeah, all the things that people are saying about will there be jobs to go back to? Will there be industries to go back to? There's and this sounds very familiar too. Oh, next month. Oh, next month. Oh, next month.
Yeah, well, and the federal government has already said that they're going to be adjourned four sitting days of Parliament, and then adjourned until the 21st of September. So, like, that to me seems very long. Seems an extraordinarily long time, and it seems like abdicating their duties. So, and I don't necessarily think abdicating the duties in the provincial level, but all of the tourist restaurants, summer camps, all of that stuff, like, decimated. Like, those whole industries are just absolutely decimated. What are we going to do? Very expensive already, and if this continues through the summer, how do you fix that? That's a very, very, very big problem.
Absolutely. And I mean, for every industry or every company or business that exists, there's probably 4 other businesses that exist because of that business. Yep. And it has a devastating ripple effect. I'm not super versed when it comes to economics and like the greater impacts of something like this. And I feel I'm like a lot of other kind of, I hate to say naive, but a lot of other, Canadians who don't know about economics. I'm just kind of thinking like, well, I sure hope everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. Everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah. And we don't know. I mean, we're going to find out sooner or later, and hoping we'll have enough money to print or what have you. I don't know how it works,
Yeah. Well, I think Bill Morneau's kind of doing the same thing. Every night he kind of goes to bed with his fingers crossed, and he's like, but I don't know. And with regard to countries of weathered debt, I mean, Ontario's in more debt than Canada is, but that's not a great, like, that doesn't make anybody feel better. Like,
not reassuring. No.
Yeah, like it's like, don't worry about it. The place where you live, that's in Canada, yeah, way more debt. So yeah, I mean, like, it's problematic. They've got this normalized electricity rate until October 31st. That's 12.8 cents or something like that. 12.8 cents all the time. We used to have like the high use and the low use, and they froze the low use, but now it's just one normalized rate because people are home all the time. It just seems like there's not a great plan. So the idea of another 30 days, like, shouldn't they have been planning already? Shouldn't we be getting an idea of, if you open up and you say to people like waiters and waitresses, and I got all tripped up at the end of my show today about the age of the waiters and waitresses. If you make it so that they won't be punished for not going back to work. Like if they're afraid of whatever, COVID or whatever, and they don't go back to work, they can stay on the curb or CERB. But if they go back to work, you've got this test population, right? Like you've got this population that's ready to go, right? I don't know. I think that there's merit to it, and like in a time where there's like summertime, like it's not flu season fundamentally. So I don't know. I don't have the right answer, and I'm sure that it's very difficult. I'd love to see the rationale for Mr. Ford's choice to do this, but I feel like it's missed opportunity. I feel like it's a ham-fisted way to manage this. If we have to go to regions, then like blanket locking down the province for another 30 days is crazy. It just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And I think that creativity of some kind would be nice. And I think it's at the point where we do need to take some risks.
Yeah.
Because I think we've talked about this before. It was flatten the curve. And now it's like stop any infection from ever happening.
Yeah.
Which is
we have to cure it. It is. It's totally absurd.
Which is, it sounds nice. It makes sense. Let's all just wait in our homes until the virus goes away.
And
it's also completely ridiculous because the world needs to keep moving at some point.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I mean,
what happens if we keep waiting around?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And at what point is it like, how much risk must there be for the government to assume it for you? Like, at what level? Like, you might die of cancer, but that might only take 5 years from you. So the government's cool with you making choices that will negatively impact your life up to that point. I mean, smoking, right? That could take half your life from you. The government's cool with that. But going out in public during COVID-19 has less than, what is it? I think it's less than 5% in Canada death rate. But when you extrapolate it to the full population, if you're not in a long-term care home, I think that the numbers change. So, like, at what point? What's that break point that the government gets to say it's too dangerous? We have to assume you're a risk for you and lock you down in your house. And shut your business down. And why are we giving them that power? It just seems crazy.
It's like I said, I feel like there's no creativity that's been applied whatsoever. It's like, what? Let's make one sweeping decision for everybody, and instead of kind of really trying to problem solve or really trying to, have a nuanced approach to this.
Yep.
And it's kind of sad because, like, yeah, it is an unprecedented situation to an extent. And instead of trying to think of new solutions or creative ways to get the economy back going, it's like, yeah, we're just going to keep everybody inside until June 30th. Yeah. We're not done the presentation. We didn't do our homework. You know what? We'll just put it off until the end of the month.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It seems like, like I wish there was more that was being done, but not to fight the virus, right? Not the flatten the curve, not the clap at the sky, not the make the masks, not that stuff. I wish there was like, and not throwing money.
We've already done the flatten the curve.
Yeah, I know. So So we should be opening back up. I know. That's what I mean. I wish there was more happening there. I wish there was more. Okay, moving on to our last story. Justin Trudeau. I don't know if he gets tripped up by this. Both Greg and I watched this, and Greg's initial reaction was exactly my initial reaction. I thought deer in headlights. He didn't have any idea of where to go with the answer. I think that he rehashes, and I didn't listen to the whole answer. I listened to the first like 2 or 3 sentences because it was the same speech he gave a few days ago at the beginning of the George Floyd thing, the everybody's racist in Canada, anti-black racism stuff. Mm-hmm. It was the same. Yeah. It was the same treatment, right? At the same location. We could just swap in the different.
And you know what was clever about his pause? It was a 20-second pause.
I've got a timer.
I believe it was a world record
of 20-second pause.
Yeah, 20-second pause. I don't know if any politician has ever paused so long to respond to a question.
Well, the tweet.
He is bilingual, right? He is bilingual.
He does, yes.
But what I think was almost ingenious about that, because he's just such an optical guy, that Justin. He's always good at greats. He sounds so great. The people watching forgot the question by the time he started talking. And I'm pretty sure it was associated with the question, but he wasn't, because I remember the question mentioned Donald Trump, and he didn't talk about that or anything having to do with cracking down on the riots or violence or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah. All right.
20-second pause.
So here we go. I've got a timer up because the audience hasn't seen the pause yet. So I'm going to play this. So here we go.
You've been reluctant to comment on the words and actions of the U.S. president, but we do have Donald Trump now calling for military action against protesters. We saw protesters tear gas yesterday to make way for a presidential photo op. I'd like to ask you what you think about that, and if you don't want to comment, what message do you think you're sending?
We all watch in horror and consternation what's going on in the United States. It is.
All right, we'll leave it there. But yeah, he doesn't get back to the tear gassers, the tear gassing protesters. And I want to make a point that when you start destroying property, you're less protesting, more rioting. And I don't think that the news should get away with calling them protesters, especially in the question there. But I think the 20-second pause was more deer in headlights than carefully considering his words. What do you think, Greg?
I don't know how his PR team works, because make no mistake, it's all PR. Mm-hmm. He's not making any decisions as he's addressing people. He's it's public relations. I don't know if he has a voice in his ear, or what, but he looked very focused and like rigid, and I don't know. It just seemed very. It was quite a pause. He I really don't know what to say.
The sigh halfway through.
There was a sigh halfway through. I don't know. It's almost like we're in a rudderless ship here. But yeah.
I think that's been true for a little while. I think that, I mean, the rudderless ship and the the focus of our government, the continued focus on the wrong or seemingly the wrong thing. Like right now when there's a crisis, a work crisis, a shut down economy, people rioting in the United States and claiming that event to start rioting in Canada, instead of calling for calm and saying riots are never the answer, violence doesn't get anything. He's taking 20 seconds to figure out his words on how to trash Donald Trump while simultaneously, making a PR soundbite for Canadians. It's tone deaf. And I like the news's focus, the news organization's focus on what's happening in the United States to create flashpoint, similar racial accusations in Canada. I mean, we have a different history. Like, I'm sorry, it's not the same, and it's frustrating to say, this police violence, blah, 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 blah. The numbers aren't there to back that up. It's frustrating.
Yeah. And, I actually think that what he said to his base is not tone deaf at all. I think if there's one thing that Justin Trudeau is actually good at, it's continuing to pander to people, feed them their platitudes, give them their nice sounding catchphrases. And I think that's what he did with his answer. Mm-hmm. I think, as usual, he didn't answer the question. Mm-hmm. And I think it's I was just thinking how funny it is of us being like, wow, he didn't answer the question. Oh my God, like we've never seen that before.
It's just old news. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, when it comes to when it comes to the violence and the protesting, it's just absolute madness. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to what's happening in the United States, but I'll just focus, I guess, what's happening in Canada. I do agree. I do feel like it's, the first clip I saw was a bunch of people breaking into Steve's music, I think,
Yep.
in Montreal to grab guitars.
Yeah,
And I
that's what I
thought,
saw.
uh, justice for Floyd, guitars for me. Like
Racism
that,
solved.
that's like, and the thing is we want to talk about justice and what to do next. What can we do to solve this problem? And it's like, well, it looks like you're using this situation to, justify criminal behavior and getting a guitar for yourself.
Yep. Yep.
And what's unfortunate is when we don't delve into the nuance and kind of separate the bad behavior and like the actions that need to be taken from the rhetoric, then the rhetoric starts to justify criminal behavior and looting and saying, well, I may have stolen that guitar, but police brutality exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I may have. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so hold on. So because police brutality exists, there shouldn't be rule of law at all anymore.
Right.
And a lot of meaningful conversations need to be had. And unfortunately, more and more, I'm thinking, you know what? I don't know if the news is our friend in this. I don't think that
You're not sure?
I don't think they're trying to make a productive conversation happen.
No.
Unfortunately, call me
No.
crazy.
Yeah.
But,
No. Well, when the Liberal government is their biggest customer, right? Because I mean, nobody else can stomach paying for that trash, right? The propaganda. It's hard to pay for propaganda. People don't like to pay for propaganda, I don't think.
Yeah, well, it's expensive. Yeah.
It's expensive. Yeah, especially when, everything else is more expensive. Maybe they've been out of work for a while. Not so good.
Yeah.
Not so good.
And it's it is too bad because I think there's so much to be proud of in Canada in terms of whatever you want to call it, racial relations, fairness. Of course, we still have our problems, but
Wow.
instead of like looking at the problems and trying to exacerbate them as much as possible and act like it's everywhere is really it seems kind of like a step backwards because it seems like what we said before, like if we're trying to make things worse. And Canadians who are listening, like I know that we follow a lot of trends of America when it comes to like pop culture and stuff, but this one of basically what's amounting to a race war in the United States, we don't want to follow that road. Why are we trying to be like the United States in that sense? That's not a good idea.
Well, and like I said, like it's not even a genuine. It's not a genuine. The numbers don't bear out the protest in Canada. You know what I mean? Like it's not. We don't have the rampant gun crime. We don't have the rampant. Well,
it's not comparable. I read this Huffington Post article. It finds pretty well all the major things from history. They mentioned like 3 acts of police brutality, which I'm not familiar with the cases. But again, if you compare that to the stats of the United States, I think it would be laughable to compare the Canada to the United States on this topic.
Yeah, and even if we were as bad as the United States, I don't think the United States has legitimate grounds to say this is so brutal, this is so bad that we have to loot and riot and destroy these businesses. Those two things don't make sense to me. If this is so bad, we are going to be like Gandhi and we're going to silently protest and we're going to, peacefully get our way by, not participating in this system. And, you've got something to say then. Okay, fine. You get a space at the table. But it seems like even when they get a space at the table, they use it to kick you in the shin. And it's like, well, like, how can you solve that, right? There's no way.
Yeah, and I think it's weird because it's almost like the terrible behavior of this cop or group of cops is living on in a really demented way, where we should be focusing on the situation itself and trying to cut it off at the root. I understand why people are emotionally reacting for whatever reason, but especially in Canada, it's like we're almost attributing that horrible behavior that happened in the United States now to our local police force.
Yeah.
And like everyone, and it's like, whoa, this I don't know, it seems very strange to kind of project that horrible situation onto the local police force. And I think it's worth mentioning, there's a big difference between that horrible behavior and something much less nefarious, like having some sort of bias in like a neighborhood of a certain ethnicity and that there being a strange tension there. And like mitigating that tension is something that is a challenge that will persist if there's criminal behavior going on. And it's like, that's something I'm not an expert on. That is something that I'm sure that I would hope, from what I've heard, Toronto police forces are getting better at that sort of thing. And it's too bad that this situation in the States is almost moving things backwards. Because it's like, you're like them, you're like those police officers who murdered that black man in the States. And it's like, well, hold on, like, not all police officers are the same.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, that's it, right? That's it. I think with that, we'll end, because that's a good note to end on. So thank you for watching. Check out speakingmoistly.co. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out CanadaPoly.com. And Greg, do you have... check out my YouTube channel. Link in the description. Perfect.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. And here is the techno beat, Speaking Moistly, to play us out.
Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly. Speaking moistly.